All right, I'm just gonna take a minute and look at my attendance while we see if anybody else comes in. Yeah, let's see if I can. For a second. Sprague. Okay, let's put our phones away, please. Down already. It's a break from them. All right, so first of all, I actually did finish grading the FRQs from Unit 7. I know we're kind of flying along here through these last 3 units. I don't have them up, but right before I leave school today, I will have those up so you see how you did. I am keeping in mind that we're using the full rubric and we're flying through these last 3 units like pretty fast. So I'm going to try to account for that, as I will with the MCQ. And I know with this poetry unit that we're doing right now, that we're just now going to look at a few poems in class for today, and then that's pretty much it. And you guys are flying through these videos. I'm going to keep that in mind with the curve that I put on there too. Okay. I don't want to make it like where you're not feeling some pressure and pushing yourself and preparing. But I do realize we're doing a lot of this in a hurry. So that's that. Just to kind of touch base on that, since I won't see you in person to review this, I think I'm maybe going to put up a video of me talking about it. If you recall, the prompt was, how does Mavis Gallant use various literary devices to create social commentary? So when you're writing a thesis for that, what do you, a line of reasoning is great, right? She uses diction, irony, or contrasting situations, or characterization, or some kind of point of view. That's all great, right? But what does a thesis also absolutely have to have in it? What do you have to name and define in order for it to be a complete thesis? What the social commentary is? Exactly. If you didn't hear that at home, Adam said what the social commentary actually is. Okay. So if you said she uses this, 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 and this, do the characters, Carol and what's his name, the guy? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm the one who just graded all these. Anyway, to create extensive social commentary, even if you add an adjective onto it, you haven't said what it is, right? So from you guys, I don't know how well you remember at this point. What was the social commentary that she was trying to get across by depicting these people? What's happening in it is the people are choosing each other for kind of shallow commonalities, right? Like both their fathers were attorneys. They're both like sort of Protestants. They're young. They're attractive. They blah 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 blah, right? But what was notably absent, admittedly, even on Carol's part, love, true love, a true connection or passion or spark, right? Okay, so that's what's really happening, right? Almost everybody got that. But if that's happening and they're marrying anyway, because they feel like they have to, then what's the social commentary? That society can tend to do what to people? What? That's when you're talking about social commentary. You're talking about what things that society does, right? If it's critical social commentary, you're kind of criticizing things that society does. So what is the author criticizing that society kind of does to young people? What does it make them think? that they have to what? That they have to get married in a hurry while they're young to someone who looks good on paper or to your family, right? That's the social commentary. So if you never got anything like that out, then you're kind of not really answering the prompt, right? So first you needed to understand that they're depicted ironically, almost kind of satirically, like these people are silly, right? But at the same time, it's kind of tragic and sad because they're being pushed into, you don't see it visibly, right? But you do see it from the guy that talks about, I believe, his sister, right? Like telling him, you're gonna be sitting around by yourself. I get married soon, right? And that's kind of sad, right? Because it creates loveless marriages and all these people who are, I mean, maybe they're both nice people, but one would hope, at least the author sounds like she hopes, that you could be patient enough to find someone that you have a real connection with. And that's what, even if you don't totally agree with that, maybe you're more of a person who thinks you want to find a partner in life and there's no such thing as ideal love. And if you have some stuff in common, you can make your way through life and learn how to love each other. But that's not what she's saying, right? She's saying, she's implying, through the depiction of these characters, kind of ironically, that it would be much better if it was something different from what I'm showing you here. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Like I said, I'll try to put up a video of that. And, MCQ is what it is, and those grades will be up soon. Okay, we are using the full rubric now. So, it's challenging, to get a 4 on, the thesis is what it is, right? The sophistication point, that is what it is, but the evidence has gone from 3 to a 4 now, right? So it needs to be accurate, it needs to be thorough, there needs to be a lot of quotes in there, and it should be dealing with meaning, right? And hopefully maybe weaving some stuff throughout there that'll kind of culminate in a little discussion at the end to get you that sophistication point. I think I'm getting some people, I think I got a lot of people getting like 4 out of 6 and 5 out of 6 because they get the prompt, right? And they're just not quite getting to the point where they're like just writing like, as much as you possibly can and quoting as much as you possibly can, to get to that 6. And it's not easy. It's not easy. I do have a lot of people getting the sophistication point by purposefully trying to broaden it out or give alternative interpretations. There's a few people who can earn it because they're just really damn good writers, right? And not everybody can quite get to the point on a timed essay that maybe you can accomplish that. So if you don't feel like you're one of those people, that I've given it to you, and I've said, if I've given it to you, then you need to purposefully broaden out that interpretation, right? And a way to broaden out this would have been, say, to kind of talk about how some readers might realize that although, because I had a lot of people talking about, yeah, this is what it was like in the 50s or whatever, because that is, seems to be what the author is implying. But has it really totally changed since the 50s? Hopefully, depends on what kind of family you're from. But is that kind of thinking that one needs to get married, find someone they have in common with, and get married fairly young in life, has that attitude like totally gone away? Probably not really, right? Or maybe not as much as we'd like to think, right? So that would be a way to kind of broaden it out and universalize it a little bit, make it see the theme is a little bit timeless. All right. Any questions about that? Right now, I just want to say that you guys really, really need to calm down. Okay, this is like totally out of control. Oh my. Okay, so let's take a look at our agenda, like we usually do. Why is my stuff blocked? Oh, I got chats going on here. Sorry, guys. Oh, hi. Oh, thanks. I didn't see you say hi before, guys. Thank you. Why is my taskbar in the way? It never does that. Oh, nice. Share. All right. Okay, on the agenda, I've got to note that if you haven't already, take a look at the key to the phrases review I posted. I actually might not have gotten that up. Did anybody look at that yet? I'll check after class, and if that's not up yet, I will put it up. I don't know whether you're going to look at it, but I do think it's good to kind of retain not only an understanding, but an ability to use these different kinds of phrases, especially on the fronts of sentences, to like vary your sentence structure. I know you can't take that much time to slow down and think about it, but if you get those verbals as transitions on the fronts of sentences, then that is a way that writing can actually apply in these essays and make them better, okay? So there is a test posted. You can do it as soon as you want, but I will post a review friendly phrases review that you can look at before you do that. So usual turn in by Wednesday, and then we'll do corrections later in the week. Okay, AP Classroom. I'm gonna do this warm up here. You guys are far away. Fully vaxxed. So we've done 2 batches of videos. I was glad to see just about everybody finished those up by last night. So we did one right before the break, and you guys did another one by last night, and that's pretty much getting us through the non-writing skills part of the poetry unit. I know poetry units are always kind of intimidating, and we're doing this one in a hurry. And then I am going to have you do the ones that are on writing for, I believe, by tomorrow night. Yeah, because that'll get you prepared for our FRQ and MCQ for Unit 8, which is going to be this Wednesday and Thursday, okay? Because we got to knock that out and then continue to get into our novels and not be trying to do 2 things at once. So I'm going to really keep in mind how quickly we're doing this and the way that I grade these, but still, it's great practice. You know, the more we do these, the better. Okay, we are going to look at a few poems in class if you want to get your rhyme books handy. But before that, let's talk about the novels. I was a little discouraged yesterday because it looked like only half the people had put their stuff up, but just about everybody has now, so we're mostly good there. Everyone should have completed the sheet. And a picture just showing me I've got the book. You know, not that you've chosen it, but that you've taken the trouble to get it. I think I might have a person or two who's getting one from me today, but I think they pointed that out to me. So what you need to do, you can even do that now if you have your computer handy, is maybe not now, we get these poems, maybe later in class. If you haven't already, you want to divide your reading up into 4 chunks, okay? So just like you did when you guys had the groups, right? Remember that? The first one, if you just got your book, you know, the first one is by this Wednesday night. So you have tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday night to complete that. I said 3 readers logs instead of 4 for the first one. But what I want to ask you to do is on the sheet, I'll make an extra column. Go ahead and publish to hold yourself to it. You know, if you change it at some point, that's fine. But put up, you know, number 1, chapters 1 through 4, number 2, chapters 5 through 9, you know, or whatever, and let me know what you're doing. You're not going to have like seminar discussions because we're all reading different books, right? There are a few people reading Gatsby, and you guys could sort of chat about that when you want, but we're not going to allot class time for having those big discussions like we did before, because that's just not how you do it. So I'm going to do my best as I grade those, starting with the first one this week, to just kind of like, you know, chat with you and give you feedback. Maybe ask you some questions and stuff. But yeah, you're just kind of mostly on your own, and that's fine. It's really interesting seeing the books that people chose. So let's see here. All right, let's get those rhyme books out. Are you borrowing one? Make sure to put it back, okay? So we don't get mixed up. Yep, just I'm not writing it down, so you guys make sure to put it back. So we have 2 books out. I'm realizing something. I don't really have any way for you guys to do group work in here. That kind of sucks. Before we could do breakout rooms, but in here, it's not like I can have you guys like huddle around the desk together. Everything's garbage. Everything's garbage, Mr. Reed. All right, we'll still make our way through. Okay, so I want to take a brief glimpse at the illusion chapter, the meaning and idea chapter, and the tone chapter. Okay, kind of touch on a few things videos are covering, but just other things that we need to touch base on anyway. And hopefully this will kind of help you guys get in a poetry reading frame of mind to do that FRQ on Thursday, as well as, of course, or MCQ on Thursday, and of course the FRQ on Wednesday. All right, so I guess I'm gonna make that clear before. FRQ for Unit 8 will be remote Wednesday. Okay, so everybody will be at home. Everybody use the lockdown browser. Did I miss something? Did I miss something? No. Oh, I thought I said something funny. I thought you guys were laughing at me. I was just curious what it was. Oh. All right, let's look at out. just off the top of our heads, since this is a chapter about illusion, right? You've learned what not illusions, of course, allusions, right? A reference to other literature, a reference to an event in history, a reference to anything else, right? Sorry, did I not give you a page number? Thank you. How'd you find it so fast? Sorry, guys, we're looking at chapter 8, beginning on page 702, for those of you at home. So the purpose of an allusion, if it's purposely put into a poem, especially if the poem is not that long, is to give more power and more depth and more resonance to what a poem might be already saying. Like it could probably say what it's going to say without the allusion, but if it reminds you of something else that has great impact on society or is a great work of literature that maybe a lot of people know, then it can give it even more power, right? And then whatever meaning and theme is being implied in the poem can be even greater because of that. So, and the best kind are when you do that and the poem still makes sense by itself, right? But then it can be strengthened if you recognize the allusion. So before we read this poem, does anybody recognize the allusion that is actually in the title of the poem? It says out, out. I wouldn't necessarily expect you to. What if I were to say out, out, brief candle? Does that sound familiar? Next question. Did you read Macbeth your sophomore year, or was that not happening yet? You did, but nobody remembers that. I know. I'm not, like I said, I'm not expecting you to, but you know, it's really cool if someone does. Okay. So it's from a really famous sort of mini soliloquy. If you turn over to page 794, okay, let's look at the allusion first, and then you can see how it kind of strengthens the poem. So if you start with that paragraph, it says Frost's title toward the bottom of page 794. Frost's title, however, is an allusion to one of the most famous passages in all English literature, and it offers a good illustration of how a poet may use an allusion not only to reinforce emotion, but also help define his theme. The passage is in Macbeth, in which Macbeth has just been informed of his wife's death. Now, not only has he been informed of his wife's death, but the guy who's become his enemy, Macduff, is closing in on the guy whose family he killed, like toward the end. He's killed several of his friends at this point. He killed the family of one of his friends, and that guy's closing in on him with his armies and the combined forces of a few people. And basically, his world is collapsing around him through his own fault. And in the middle of that, he hears that his wife has died. Okay. Things not going so well for Macbeth. Life's feeling like pretty meaningless, right? Through his own fault, of course, but still. A good many readers will call the key phrase out, out, brief candle with its underscoring of the tragic brevity and uncertainty of life. For some readers, however, the allusion will sum up the whole passage in Act 5, Scene 5, in which Macbeth says this stuff. She should have died hereafter. Hereafter means like some other time. There would have been time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Seeing that whole thing, do you kind of remember this scene now? It's definitely some of the most famous lines from that. And you see, he's just feeling empty, and like all of his entire life feels like a big joke to him, and it kind of was, because the witches basically played this big joke on him and made him ruin his own life, right? But what else is going on in there? Think about like the metaphors or apostrophe or even metonymy, if you remember what that is. Just kind of looking at this as a poem, what kind of makes it powerful by itself, and then we can talk about how it contributes to the actual poem there. What things are represented through symbols or metaphors by various objects in what he's saying? Like, what does he mean? What's the brief candle a symbol for? Actually, it's more of a metaphor because the candle's not really there either. What? Pretty much like an individual life, right? It's like we're all candles. We're not just candles, but we're brief candles, right? Because he's sensing like the meaninglessness, brevity, and shortness of each individual life. Now, that doesn't mean that that's true, and we should all believe that too, right? But it's a viewpoint that he has because of the situation that he's in, that these individual lives feel like meaningless, and they're just going to be like, you know, and then you're gone, right? Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. In other words, he feels like, again, right? The character that Shakespeare is creating feels like that not only are we all like brief candles, but each one of us is also could kind of be said to be compared to whom doing what? Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. What in a play? Or whom in a play? An actor, right? Yeah, because that's what it means by player, right? So an actor or a character on the stage. It's like we're all in this big play. Like there is no real life, right? What's that? Yeah, for sure. There's all kinds of stories like that. It's a common theme, right? So it kind of all goes back to this, right? Okay, so and it's and what the darkly funny part is at the end. It, as in life in general, is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Like it all feels meaningless. What's how Shakespeare actually kind of being kind of self-deprecating there?
Told by an idiot.
Yeah. That's great. I love that. Right in the middle of that horrifying dialogue and scene, Shakespeare kind of like, oh, I'm just an idiot telling stories, right? Sometimes it feels like everything's like that. All right. So keeping all of that in mind, take 5 or 10 minutes on your own and read out. And then we'll just maybe kind of chat through some of the questions and stuff. But you guys need to practice reading quietly on your own. So make you really feel cheerful for the rest of the day, right? So what's odd about the allusion that's quote unquote in this poem? What is it not really? In other words, it's the title, right? But is it anywhere else in the poem directly? It's really not, right? So it just kind of informs us overall that he's connecting the experience in the poem to that scene from Macbeth, right? So how does that kind of connect? Let's talk about what happens in the poem first, right? It's like in the next chapter, we're going to look at meaning and idea, as in, all right, there's the prose meaning and there's what happens, right, in the poem, or what's said, right? But then, a little bit more of an inference level, you have to figure out, well, what's the purpose? What's the idea? What's the theme, right? So what happens here? Can we just paraphrase? There's an accident, pretty bad accident, right? So they're chopping wood, they're using chainsaws, and what happens to the kid? Or mangled somehow, right? The chainsaw goes into his hand, and I don't think it's quite cut up, but it's like, he's like bleeding out like all over the place, right? And what's kind of odd about it is, you might notice like Poetic Devices that the chainsaw is almost kind of personified, like it comes to life and attacks. Like it all seems so meaningless, right? Like it's a tragic, horrible, absolutely by chance accident into a young person too, which makes it even worse, right? And then what happens, right? They're trying to kind of put him out, right, with the ether, but then even though he hasn't been like cut in half or something amputated or anything, he just kind of just dies, right? Before anybody can even think about it too much, right? But then the end of it feels kind of odd, right? The doctor put him back in the dark of ether. He lay and puffed his lips out with his breath, and then notice the use of the dash there, right? Punctuation can kind of like create a mood too, and then like as if everybody froze. The watcher at his pulse took fright. Kind of interesting syntax there, right? Putting fright on the end of the line. No one believed. They listened to his heart. See how like choppy and shocked it becomes? Little, less, nothing. And that ended it. No more to build on there. And they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. It sounds so cold, doesn't it? What? It doesn't really say, but I think what it implies is that in the larger picture, he was dead and that they went on with their lives. Not that they literally walk away and don't bury him or something, right? We've seen this theme in some poems before, right? About how no matter how much that we want to make it more meaningful or that it seems cold, that the world is going to move on no matter how tragically somebody dies, right? That being said, it still does feel horrible, like it can almost make you feel like life is like meaningless or something, because why would this, you said that before, why would this happen to somebody who's young or who's so nice or was such a good person, right? Like I personally, like this poem like reminds me of, I don't know whether you guys know the story of Joe Bertram, who's, it's now, I mean, some of you might even know his family or something, their local family. He was in my first class that I taught at Coleraine High School in 1998. Literally one of the best kids I've ever taught, one of the best people I've ever known. And why at a fairly young age did he like suddenly contract cancer, and then like within like a year or two he's dead? It's horrible, right? And I felt, that made me feel kind of that out feeling. It was powerful, it was bad, but I mean this poem resonates with me because I think of like tragedies like that, and I'm not the only one who feels like that when I read this poem. Right? It seems like such a downer, but no matter how difficult the thing somebody's expressing in a poem, the power of it is that, like, all right, I get what I'm feeling now because other people have felt this in all kinds of other situations like that. Okay, and then you kind of see how that's kind of strengthened by, not that anybody in here is like Beth, right? But it's a situation in which you're going to feel like, God, this just seems like a big, horrible joke. This is so absurd, right? Like, why would this happen? Okay, so there's an example of a powerful illusion. Let's move right on up to page 805, everybody, meaning and idea. So I was mentioning before, when we get into a poem, we want to understand the speaker, we want to understand the situation and what happens, but what we really want to get at is the total meaning, right? The meaningful meaning, the theme, right? So you can have poems that maybe are about similar situations, right? Similar things that happen, but they could say something very differently about humanity or human nature or morals or appreciating nature or whatever it's about. So let's take a look at Loveliest of Trees and Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. These are two poems that are paired together because they're about very similar subjects, but something slightly different happens with the speaker of each poem, and they definitely have different meanings that you see. Let's go one at a time. Read Loveliest of Trees on your own, and then see if you can just maybe think about that first question and jot something down so we'll have something to talk about. Okay, speaker and situation here. It's just some dude looking at some cherry trees, right? Contemplating his age and how much time he has left, right? And then he says, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go look at those cherry blossoms. That's all that happens, right? All right, that's not particularly interesting, right? So where does this philosophy of life statement that is apparently in this poem come from here? Well, let's look at the second and third questions first. Can we tell how old he is in the present tense of the poem? 20, yeah. So when he says 80 years and 10, that would be a total of 70. That's actually a biblical allusion there. I don't know whether anybody is sharp on that stuff and recognizes that, but it's like Psalm 90 or something like that. I'm not sure, but it was a line that's known for the general acceptance that human beings have about 70 years or something. I can't remember the whole context. Anyway, it's supposed to add some depth and resonance there. He's saying if he has his 70, 20 will not come again. He could mean I'm not going to get 20 more years after that, right? Or I'm not going to be able to be 20 years old again, right? Both of those can make sense there. And take from 70 springs a score. I'm not going to get another score. So it only leaves me 50 more. Now, only, and then when he says, it's sense to look at things in bloom, 50 springs are a little room, that's maybe a little bit of a purposeful overstatement, right? 50 years sounds like a lot to you, right? But maybe to someone who's 70 or someone who's 50, 51 now, turned 51 last week, it doesn't feel like much because it all ends up slipping by, right? So I don't know whether he wrote this when he was 20. Something tells me that he probably wrote this when he was older and is speaking from the point of view of somebody who's 20 because he knows how fast it's going to slip by, right? That kind of makes sense, but we don't know. But what does he mean about the woodlands? I will go to see the cherry hung with snow. Snow is it really talking about snow? No. It's the blooms on the cherry trees. This poem always makes me think of, if I go to Spring Grove Cemetery, been in there or walked around there, how like incredibly beautiful is that place? Like it is like people don't realize it's just a couple miles away. If you guys have never been in there, you need to get in there sometime. Unfortunately, we're just probably 2 weeks past when all the weeping cherry trees like have their blossoms, which is what this is talking about, and it's just incredibly beautiful. Like there's a few kind of roads in there where it's like it looks like just like this canopy hung with like, you know, it kind of looks like snow, right, with some red mixed in because of the cherry blossoms. But what is he insisting that he will do, and what does it end up meaning is like a life philosophy? Because there's only so much time that I have, I insist as a human being that I will do what, even if I don't feel like I can stop and do it. What?
I said YOLO.
What?
Because you want to do it now and not.
Right, exactly, right. But do what though? Like what is, I mean, obviously he's talking about going to look at these cherry blossoms, but what does that represent in a broader sense? I mean, what kinds of things? To be able to stop, right, and take a deep breath and look at something beautiful and just kind of take it in, right? That is a difficult thing to do as human beings because we always feel too busy, right? But is it important? Well, whether or not we feel so, that's what the poem is implying. That's important, that you have to slow down and take a breath and enjoy something beautiful for itself and for nothing else. Right? I have trouble doing that too. That's why I like to go to Spring Grove though. All right. Similar topic, different theme, stopping by woods. Take 5 minutes to look at that one. Then maybe think about the question, how do these poems differ in idea? Okay, so speaker here, just some dude on a horse out in the woods, maybe kind of making his way home. Snow, right? And it's still about stopping and looking at it, right? It's here more literal snow, right? But what happens? He stops, he looks, and then what happens to the horse and what does he do? Because the horse doesn't understand what for no reason, right? I'm not getting food, you're not getting off and going in somewhere. So the horse is like, what are we doing? But then regardless, even though he pauses for a little bit, what does he decide that he has to go ahead and do? To get presumably, or well, he's not going to the house that he's looking at. That's just some place that he stopped, right? But if he says, the woods are lonely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. So wherever he's going, presumably home or to his family or wherever it is, right? Well, it's like, I do have to go. I can't just sit here and stare at this, right? So see how it's very different, right? But then why write a poem about it? Where's the meaning and value in this poem if he tried to stop and look at some pretty stuff, but then he just decided he had to go? So where's the meaning and value is being in that? It's kind of a tough one. It seems to present a different philosophy, right? That even though we want to stop sometimes and look and contemplate something beautiful, what do we sometimes also have to do and for what types of reasons as human beings? Think of it this way. What if everybody, all the time, as much as they wanted, just stopped and contemplated a beautiful tree and, no one would get anything done, right? And that's not as fun of an idea, right? And people who are keeping promises, I'd like to go do that. Go over to Spring Grove and sit there for like 2 hours. I mean, you know what happened if I did that? My sons would be waiting for me to pick them up from track practice, like by themselves, unattended by any adults, right? So that's realistic too, right? But there's still meaning and value in there because think about the contrast of the human being to the horse, right? The horse is unable to even contemplate that, right? And the human being is like, I'm going to stop and look at this, at least for a little bit, right? Because I want to, because I have the ability to think of things in an abstract way, right? And that's why we're human beings, and that's why we should feel good about human beings. And at the same time, if he has promises to keep, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, right? Because that means he has loved ones and family, right? Or friends and promises to keep, like they're depending on him, and that's good, right? And all those things can be good too. So you can appreciate both poems, even though they seem to have like almost like opposite ideas. Now the first one is more fun, right? Because we'd like to think that we can do that all the time or as much as we want, but can we really? No. So maybe we can do that loveliest of trees sometimes. And then sometimes it's okay to realize I have responsibilities and I can't linger here as long as I'd like, even though it's really beautiful. Right? Similar topics, different themes, and it's possible to hold them both in your head and appreciate both of their values. Okay. All right. One more. So we're going up to a chapter on tone now, and I wish we had a lot more time to do this, but I do want to look at one poem on page 825. You get a real kick out of this one. And it's called Picnic Lightning. Starts with an illusion. My very photogenic mother died in a freak accident, picnic lightning, when I was 3. Okay. Dark note to start off. Give that one a read, and we'll talk about it in like 5 minutes. And look for a turn. Let's think about a turn in which the tone of the poem switches from sounding one way to sounding another. Sorry. Seem to have a common theme of like tragic accidents going today. I am not trying to depress you, however, and I think this poem is anything but depressing. So the illusion at the beginning kind of establishes how any messed up accident of death, unfortunately, could happen to anyone at any time. It's true, right? Can't argue. Doesn't matter even if your mother is photogenic, right? Doesn't matter how beautiful you are, how young you are, crazy stuff can happen. So that kind of sets the tone, right? And then what is the next couple stanzas? What is the poet what kind of events does he kind of relate to us? The various ways of what happening. That's an easy question. Right. Whether by freak natural causes or freak external causes, right? A meteor, a plane, right? It's almost comical in a dark way, the things that he brings up. It sounds almost kind of cartoonish, right? The last part, decides to quit after lunch, the power shut off like a switch, or a tiny dark ship is unmoored into the flow of the body. Basically talking about an aneurysm there, right? Something getting clogged. And then he goes to the third stanza. This is what I think about when I shovel compost into a wheelbarrow. He's almost like laughing at himself, right? Obsessing about death. When I fill the long flower boxes, then press into rows the limp roots of the red impatience, the instant hand of death, always ready to burst forth from the sleeve of his voluminous cloak. Almost like what kind of figure reference there by the way he describes death? Long voluminous cloak. A Grim Reaper. Yeah, like a Grim Reaper, right? Like death just kind of like waiting around the corner. Could be any time. But then, and notice the word then, right? Hopefully I'm running out of time, but hopefully you can see that that's a big turn there, right? Then, after I think about all that, then the soil is full of marbles, bits of leaf like flakes off a fresco, red-brown pine needles, a beetle quick to burrow back under the loam. Then the wheelbarrow is a wider blue, the clouds a brighter white, and all I hear is the rasp of the steel edge against a round stone, the small plants singing with lifted faces, and the click of the sundial's 1 hour sweeps into the next. What changes the tone of that? Why do the thoughts of what he was thinking about before, then as he is gardening, turn into like this incredibly beautiful, like hopeful tone at the end of the poem? How does that make sense? Why would you thinking about random death make you then sound like he does to him? That seems to make sense, but I think it kind of does. What makes us appreciate life? The fact that that it's gonna end, right? If it wasn't, and we were immortal, I mean that's a thing we've seen a million times, right? If we were immortal, he wouldn't be seeing the small plants singing with lifted faces and like his senses all just like invigorated and magnified in this way that makes your blood flow, right? We just be like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna live forever. You know, it's a paradox, right? It's the very nature of the fact that we know that life could end at any time that makes us realize the beauty in even the smallest things of life and see life in everything. So it's a really unlikely conclusion to the poem, but if you think about it, the more you think about it, the more it kind of makes sense, right? Since the piano could drop on my head any week, I see the beauty in the flowers. That's kind of what that poem ends up saying. So there's, again, a great difference between what's happening in a poem, right, and then what it's supposed to mean. And then, of course, the turn, right? It seems like a really dark tone. So it seems like a really dark tone at first, and then we hit that turn. It sounds totally different. There we go.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Keep an eye on all these assignments, guys. We're going to sign off. Thanks for being here.